It's being reported that China has somehow managed to sink their own nuclear submarine in a major blow to China's military ambitions. Its newest nuclear-powered attack submarine reportedly sank earlier this year, creating a ripple of concerns both domestically and internationally. And this incident comes at a time when China is aggressively expanding its naval fleet, aiming to assert its dominance, especially in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, it's being reported by a senior U.S. defense official the submarine, which was the first of its class, went down while docked at a pier between May and June. Okay, so when it comes to satellite imagery and public scrutiny, in the wake of the incident, satellite images from Planet Labs surfaced, showing cranes at the Wuchang shipyard in June, where the submarine would have been docked. And these images basically suggest that recovery efforts were underway. While this provides some evidence of the incident, it also raises questions about how much information China will eventually release, if any. And the global spotlight on this event, combined with satellite technology, makes it harder for China to completely cover up such mishaps, even if it chooses not to address them publicly. I mean, if you are unaware, China literally has smashed into Filipino ships and said, "It is absolutely impossible we've ever done this. We even have scientific evidence to prove otherwise." And the Philippines just straight up released images saying, okay, there are gaping holes in the side of our ships. What are you talking about scientific evidence? So once again, and I think many of you know this, China is just known to deny, and just act like nothing ever happened. And the details do remain scarce. The exact cause of the sinking remains unknown, but there's also significant concern regarding whether the submarine had nuclear fuel on board when it sank. And for China, this submarine represented more than just another naval asset. It was a key component of their growing military strategy, aimed at modernizing their forces to compete with the United States and its allies. For example, China's naval expansion has been moving at a rapid pace. In fact, with over 370 ships, China technically possesses the largest navy in the world, outpacing even the US Navy in terms of sheer numbers. But just a side note, just because China has more ships than the US Navy, understand Chinese ships are tiny, so they are able to pop those bad boys out very fast. But the loss of this submarine could reveal deeper problems with China's military-industrial complex, problems that have plagued its defense industry for decades. Now, the loss of a first-in-class nuclear submarine is no small event, especially for a nation like China, which is positioning itself as a major global power. I mean, imagine the headlines if the US military sank their own submarine within its own waters that was nuclear powered. The whole world would absolutely make fun of the US for that. While the official cause of the sinking has yet to be revealed, there are speculations that it could be due to mechanical failure, human error, or perhaps a combination of both. Given that this was a nuclear-powered vessel, any fault in its design or operation carries serious risk, not just to the immediate crew, but also to the environment and nearby regions. The sinking of the submarine raises important questions about the People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN, operational safety standards, training, and overall readiness. Now, the U.S. defense official who brought this entire story to light is casting doubts on the quality of the training received by the Chinese naval personnel, as well as the standards of oversight and accountability within China's defense industry. You see, this is a defense sector that for years has been riddled with corruption, scandals, subpar quality control, and political interference. And these internal challenges have been masked by the dramatic expansion of China's military, but incidents like this bring to light very real problems China faces as it transitions from a regional power to a potential global military leader. What does it say about China's ability to project power on the world stage if one of their most advanced vessels suffers such a fate? Now, what's even more alarming is the silence from Beijing. One thing that stands out in this case is how little information has been released by Chinese authorities. Beijing has remained notably silent on the matter, and China's embassy in Washington has not responded to requests for comment. This lack of transparency is not entirely surprising. China's government has a long-standing policy of keeping military mishaps and accidents under wraps, especially those that could tarnish the image of the People's Liberation Army and its capabilities. Now, what's interesting is that China's state-run media has also avoided the topic. Instead, the Chinese government has focused on highlighting other advancements in its military capabilities. For example, just one day before the submarine sinking came to light, China successfully launched an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean. This rare missile test, likely aimed at demonstrating China's growing nuclear capabilities, might have been an attempt to shift the narrative away from the submarine incident. For Beijing, admitting to the loss of such an advanced submarine could severely undermine the narrative of China's unstoppable rise. It could also raise uncomfortable questions among the Chinese public about the government's massive investment in military infrastructure and whether that money is being used wisely. Again, we have to remember, China's not just filled with a bunch of robots working in random plants or factories. These are real people too with actual opinions. Now, there are some implications for China's naval strategy. For example, China has made enormous strides in recent years to enhance its submarine fleet, particularly its nuclear-powered submarines. According to a 2022 report by the U.S. Department of Defense, China's submarine force includes 6 nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, 6 nuclear-powered attack submarines, and 48 diesel-powered attack submarines. And this fleet is expected to expand even further, with estimates predicting that China will have around 65 submarines by 2025 and 80 by 2035. This submarine expansion is part of China's broader strategy to establish a blue water naval capability of operating far beyond its coastal waters and projecting power across the globe, particularly in the Pacific. And just a quick side note, if anyone is questioning what exactly is China's end goal here, a lot of people are actually stating that Australia seems to be one of the main targets for China as far as influence and overpowering their military. While China has been rapidly advancing its shipbuilding capabilities, this incident underscores the risk associated with moving too quickly. You see, building a modern, technologically advanced navy takes more than just financial investments, which this is what China does. They buy their way into things. I mean, just look at Africa. China is literally buying up Africa left and right, just using financial investments, but poorly built things. This all requires a level of expertise, rigorous training, and quality control measures that China is still working to fully develop. In recent years, China has also focused heavily on developing its naval infrastructure to support its growing fleet. It has built or modernized several naval bases, including those in the South China Sea, which have become key strategic assets in the region. However, this latest incident again could signal that China's naval ambitions are outpacing its ability to maintain and operate such sophisticated fleets. Now, the timing of the submarine sinking is also noteworthy given the current geopolitical climate. Relations between the US and China really have been strained, especially in military manners. Now, the timing of the submarine sinking is also noteworthy given the current geopolitical climate. I mean, relations between the US and China really have been strained, especially within military context. The South China Sea in particular remains a flashpoint for tensions, with the US and its allies challenging China's territorial claims by conducting freedom of navigation operations, which is really where the US just drives its ships in the South China Sea and lets China know, hey, we're here, what are you going to do about it? And both nations have engaged in military exercises in the region. I'm sure we've all seen military exercises with Taiwan. China does the exact same thing, mainly by crashing its ships into Filipino ships. Now look, in an effort to prevent misunderstandings and build some level of stability in military relations, the US and China held theater-level commander talks earlier this year, which is a good thing. These talks were aimed at reducing tensions and ensuring that incidents like the sinking of the submarine do not lead to a wider military confrontation. However, I think it's apparent that with this latest incident, we can all see how fragile China's naval capabilities really have become. So look, as the US and its allies continue to strengthen their military presence in the region, particularly through alliances like the Quad or US, Japan, Australia, and India, China will need to reassess how it plans to counter these moves without risking further embarrassment or setbacks. So, yeah, that's pretty much the story. I mean, this is obviously extremely embarrassing for China, but I don't think anyone is that surprised by it. I just wanted to bring to light that this is what happens when you dump a bunch of money into a program, but if you don't have enough training or quality control, you have China's Navy, a bunch of really small ships that are falling apart.